All right. This is Saturday, September 6th, and we have to go over the key commemorative dates for Buffalo Soldiers Day, July 28th, and then African Landing Day. And Miss D is going to give us a narrative. Miss D?
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon. Good evening, everyone. On our two topics for the late summer dates, the Buffalo Soldiers date and first landing date. Buffalo Soldiers date is a recognition date, not a state holiday in Nevada. It is only recognized in a few states. I will wait. Who's F?
I think we can carry on, Miss D.
Okay. As I say, it is a day of recognition. It's not a state holiday or anything. It is to recognize the 9,000 Buffalo soldiers uh, and more that they followed up the United States colored troops. So we should go back a little bit. When the Civil War first started, there were no blacks allowed in the military. As the war progressed, and they were finding out that they were losing. The Southerners decided that they might accept a few black soldiers to help fight. They had some fight during the Revolutionary War, um, and so now we're with the 1800s, and the United States decided that they could accept some colored troop soldiers in exchange for their freedom. The original United States colored troops came in from New York and Philadelphia, um, or Pennsylvania, Indiana, and Illinois primarily. They trained in Philadelphia and they went into the war zone. They did fight, they did work towards their own freedom. So where people are saying we did nothing for our own freedom, the U.S. colored troops were there. They fought the last battle at Appomattox. However, the general there would not surrender to a black army, so he waited until the white soldier showed up before he turned in his resignation. And that was, as I say, one of the last battles of the Civil War. Going forward, we now have the U.S. colored troops on their way to Texas-Mexico border to fight Maximilian, and we loaded up a number of ships. Once again, there was about 6,000 African American soldiers in addition to white soldiers and Indians, Native Americans. They picked up General Granger in Alabama, and they stopped in Galveston, Texas, because they had had the fire, they had had the storm that we've talked about before. So they stopped in there for supplies. And shortly after that, of course, the war was over, and folks now had their recognition of freedom in the last states over in Texas, saying that you are not enslaved any longer. You are now free. And the last of the soldiers are now getting out of the army. The white soldiers, which had been in first, got out first. So a majority of the soldiers that went to Texas were black. But then as they came out of the service, they started spreading out across the states. And a lot of them went to the Western Territory, which is now Oklahoma and a couple of the surrounding states there. And while they were there, they became known as the Buffalo Soldiers. So the United States colored troops are the progenitors of the Buffalo Soldiers. There is more than one reason for the name that is said that the Indians named them because they looked uh, similar to the buffaloes with their fuzzy hair, and they were hard workers and great fighters. The other people we don't know. They picked it up along the way and carried it on through, but they went on. The Buffalo Soldiers went on to be the generation that started the military. I mean the sheriff and uh, uh, they were like the sheriffs and whoever had to the marshals in the Western territories and Buffalo's no Bass the Lone Ranger was actually based on a Buffalo Soldier. You saw him on TV as a white man with a mask with a Native American by his side. And actually, Bass was a black man who was a well thought of marshal in the area of the Western Territory. And the Native American that they called Tonto on the TV show was actually a well-educated Native American. So once again, the stories have been changed to protect, I can't say the innocent. We weren't innocent. We did the work. We should have gotten the credit, but they took the credit on that also. Um, after they went into that, they merged into becoming the first firefighters uh, in the Park Service and parachute. They were parachutists that was actually fighting fires, jumping from planes and putting fires out. And at this time, the Buffalo Soldiers have evolved into the Park Service, and they are now in charge of the grounds of the White House in Washington, D.C. So 2011, we got the Juneteenth, first day of recognition. Buffalo Soldiers must have been about 2016 or 2017 that they got their bill. Their bill was based on the Nevada paperwork for Juneteenth, and it was presented by Assemblyman um, McCurdy and Senators Dallas Harris and Senator Patricia. Oh, Pat. I can't think of Pat's last name. But they presented the bill for the Buffalo Soldiers at a Juneteenth event that year. And we do have pictures of them at our event with the Buffalo Soldiers proclamation. So that kind of eases up and takes us out of the Buffalo Soldier territory, moving into August. August 25th is the day that is recognized as the landing of the first African Americans in the northern and eastern portion of the United States. Now, there have been black soldiers or black Africans and of various tribes in Florida. They were brought in by the French, the Spanish, and the Dutch, uh, and the French and the Spanish and the English. They had quite a bit of fighting down there over whose territory it was. But we're not going to touch on that. That's just to let you know that they were in the country in the 1500s, possibly the late 1400s. We had blacks in this country. We're starting our history from uh, August 25th, 1619, which is when the ship came in. It was a pirate ship. Let's see, we had some slavers, which were men who had gone to Africa to take possession of the Africans and make them slaves. They dropped some off in South America before coming towards North America. And in the process, the ship was captured by a Dutch pirate ship. The pirate ship took possession of a number of the Africans on the ship, and they dropped some of them off before coming into what was in Virginia, Point Comfort. Now, you probably heard along the lines that we arrived in Jamestown, Virginia, and that is incorrect. Jamestown territory or Jamestown community covered Point Comfort. So when they came in not as slaves, they did not come in as necessarily as indentured, but they did have to pay back the money that had been given to the pirates who brought them to the land. So the pirates did actually sell them to the Virginians, but the Virginians let them buy themselves their freedoms back. So 7 to 10 years after they arrived in 1619, the Africans were free. They married. They married whites. They married Indians. There was no rules. There was no slavery. And that day is now recognized in Hampton, Virginia, which is the new name for Port Comfort. And there were many years there was competition because Jamestown had continued the story that they had arrived in Jamestown. What happened, they came into Port Comfort, and several of them were sent to Jamestown afterwards to work. And this is how Jamestown actually had the true connection to the first Africans in the area. Um, we did not get slavery until approximately 1707, I believe it is, when a one of the owners or one of the people who had the indentured people went to court because he did not want to let him go free. Uh, as it turns out, he had a good reason. He did not want him to go free because the man owed him money. It was not because he wanted to just keep the man enslaved. He was trying to get the man's work to work off the money that he owed him. So this is when the first parts of slavery actually occurred, when the judge said, "You get to keep him in your working for you until he pays his way out." And this was used as the reasoning for slavery going forward. People started using this one court case as the reason to legitimize slavery in the Virginia area, which then spread to the other 12 uh, United States that were originally in the 11, 12, 13 United States. So Virginia was also one of the first states, I believe, to ban slavery, along with Rhode Island and a couple of the other ones. But that is where we celebrate First Landing Day. This last year, it was held in Hampton, Virginia. A number of African chiefs come into our country on a yearly basis to celebrate with us. Flowers are thrown into the water. It is on the waterfront. They throw the flowers there in recognition and in tribute to the first enslaved people that came into the country and the ones that did not live to see the enslavement. Some people died on the ships from illness, and the other ones, some people just jumped off the ship rather than be held. So there is a recognition of and tribute to them. Flowers on the water. There is a program of African dancers and jazz musicians that goes on every year. And so that is part of the project 1619. Um, And if you hear anybody talk about 1619 project, most of their information is incorrect. 1619 project stole the name from the project 1619, and Pearson Calvin Pearson researched all this information. This is where we get the information of the first Africans. Calvin Pearson actually found the books, the log book that showed when they came in, the ship that they came in on, and who brought them in and what happened to them afterwards. So this is why we know this is the correct information on the first Africans that came into this country. And that's pretty much it. They started off in Virginia, they spread throughout the states. Slavery started for the next 160 years up until 1865. And once we had Juneteenth, and everybody started spreading farther across the country, which then again led you to the U.S. colored troops, which evolved into the Buffalo Soldiers. So it's all connected. When you get to the Western Territories, it takes you into Tulsa. So you'll hear about the Tulsa Massacre in 2021. You will hear about the things in Rosewood, which was in Florida, where the whites completely destroyed the town and it never rebuilt. So that's why we say all things Juneteenth. So if you take your time to study the stories, everything goes back to a connection. It is a web. It starts off in Virginia and spreads up to Washington, Canada today. Underground Railroad, where the slaves were going when they were running away. That's another story we'll tell you. It doesn't have a particular day, but there were two underground railroads, both one in the north that went to Canada, and another one in the south that went across the south into Mexico, which gives you the Maringos, uh, who celebrate Juneteenth in Mexico. So we'll pick you. We will get this all broken down for you, and I'm working on some paperwork, so we will have something in writing for you to get some names, so you can learn. You can look up the John Horses that took 300 slaves out of the South and took them into Mexico, who fought off the white military who was trying to capture them. Um, we will cover some of the other stories, as I say, about Rosewood, about Tulsa, and Rentersville, Oklahoma. There were 100 there were 100 black towns in the 1800s, and 88 of them were in Oklahoma. So we'll talk a little bit about more of them in the future also. Miss Marquis, I turn it back over to you unless the ladies have questions.
I guess we pause and wait to see if we have any questions. So, Miss D, can you make a correlation between the Buffalo Soldiers back then and the Buffalo Soldiers today?
The Buffalo Soldiers of today are tribute to the Buffalo Soldiers of the 19th century. They incorporated, they're more like social clubs today. Uh, but the ones here in Nevada are the 9th and 10th Cavalry Unit that we worked with in the past, and also the motorcycle Buffalo Soldiers. And of course, you know, we did not have Buffalo Soldiers on motorcycles in the 1800s.
Right.
So there is more of a it's not it's more than a social club. It's they go by the rules of the Buffalo Soldiers. They want them recognized. They want you to recognize that there was a black woman in the military in the United States Colored Troops who later became known as one of the Buffalo Soldiers. Um, and it's something that they do in pride. Um, they did their main office. It runs out of Texas. They have troops across the country. We've worked with some on the East Coast, who show up at our parades. We've had them in Washington, Maryland. They come to Fort Point Comfort every year when we have our shove off day leading into the Juneteenth, and they're recognized as such. They have the values, let me say, of the original Buffalo Soldiers, men of pride who have worked for our benefit throughout the years.
Okay. So that brings us the Buffalo Soldiers. Now, when we're talking about African Landing Day or First Landing Day, the significance now with uh, Fort Comfort, is that what it is? Fort Comfort.
It was Fort Comfort and Point Comfort, but now it is known. What did I just say?
You said Fort and then you said Point.
Hampton. Now it's Hampton. No, but now it is Hampton, Virginia.
Oh, Hampton, Virginia, not Southampton. Okay, Hampton, Virginia.
It's Hampton, Virginia today.
And as far as the shift between the slavers to the enslaved or the indentured to slavery and then freedom, basically that all came through Virginia.
That okay, the first shift. Now, no, New Orleans is is probably the biggest place that they brought the ships at. New Orleans and a couple of places in South Carolina is where most of the ships came in. And they had the slave market when we were in New Orleans a couple years ago. It would there was a place down the street. There's a couple of places with signs still on the buildings. It said this is where they sold the slaves. They put them up on the platform. They made them stand up. They made them open their mouth. You check their teeth. They made them bend over so you could see that they didn't have hemorrhoids. Uh, in some cases they made them take all their clothes off. You could see that they had no scars. They had not been beaten because they were disloyal or because they tried to run away. You got a chance to count all their fingers and hands and toes because you just make sure that they had not tried to run away. Um, and they would say, here's a young girl. You can get a lot of good babies out of her. They brought the women out and sold them as baby makers. Talking about baby mamas, baby makers. This is what they sold the women as. They sold the men saying these men will get your girls pregnant as well as work in the fields. And you will get a lot of good work out. But some guys were just strictly nothing to do but to make the women pregnant. And there are certain names out there that no, ain't gonna say that. But if there's a term out there that is used too much today, mother blank, it's because in a lot of cases they put a bag over the men's head and they did not see who the woman was. And in some cases, they were getting their own mothers pregnant.
That's terrible. Besides disgusting.
Yeah. We also had the white slavers and the guys that worked out in the field, the overseers. They would come into the families lived maybe 4 or 5 families in each hut. Man, wife, their kids, another family. And the white man would just come in and tell the woman, drop your clothes. And the husband could say nothing. And everybody's watching while this was going on. They actually raped the women because they wanted satisfaction and they wanted to make more babies to sell.
Okay.
We were considered no more than a cow or a plate. or a horse.
So a
When
product.
people wrote their wills, they wrote a will, and I'm going to give my daughter 12 pieces of silverware, 12 plates, and 3 slaves. The same things when she got married. As part of her betrothal, she's gonna take her personal servant, and I'm gonna give her so and so to cook for her, and so to clean the house for her, and so to work out in the field. So we were just traded, just like you would trade a book, like you would trade a apple or an orange. You were just nothing but an item.
A product, right. Yeah. Ladies, do we have any questions? Any comments?
I don't, but I think Miss D covered it pretty well. But it's 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 crazy to know where certain quote unquote cuss words come from.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know about the kids out there, the boys out there wearing their pants below their belt line, below their butts. Where'd that come from?
Jail, right?
Nope. Slavery times. It started in slavery times before it got to the jail. It meant the master had embarrassed a man in certain ways that we're not going to talk about. But I'll let your imagination work your way through it. But they broke the men the same way they broke the women. So once they did that, they wore their pants down to let you know that they were available.
Oh.
And if more boys knew that, if more thought about even that it doesn't signify anything in the jail terms because it's similar, they would belt their pants up real high. They'd be wearing them up under their neck.
Some. So the significance of us learning our history is so that we don't repeat
We
and
hope not to repeat.
don't repeat those things, as well as, like Misty was just saying, if boys knew where this sagging came from, maybe they would make a different choice. However, with with us not sharing the history, with it not being passed down, you're subject to be on the wrong side of the tracks or the wrong side of the fence, basically not knowing why you do certain things. We have a terrible trend that has hit our culture through entertainment as well as just, I'm going to say, pure ignorance, where we're walking around in less and less clothes, shorter, shorter, and in some cases, none at all. And I have nothing against the human body, but there is a place and a time for, there's a place and a time for all of it. As the Bible tells us, anything and everything in moderation. So there is a place and a time. And we have seemed to find ourselves twisted. So we do desire to keep the history of Juneteenth alive so that, if nothing else, you can make choices with knowledge and not out of ignorance.
Amen. That's all we're trying to do is give you the knowledge to make a decision and not take something that someone just tells you to do. You get to think for yourself with full knowledge of what it really means when you make that decision.